Hi. Alina Craft have a set of flower dies. There are 2 separate flower shapes and 6 dies in total. There is a sort of 3-petal one and a 5-petal one, and each of these dies is quite similar. There is an emboss value to these dies, and what I mean by that is if you cut them on something with enough pressure, the lines here which do not cut, the inside lines are flat. Okay, that's the cutting edge there. If you cut it on a machine with enough pressure or run it through with an embossing mat, you will emboss these lines into the flower petals. Okay, so they do have an emboss value. What I want to do is I just want to quickly cut them for you so you can see how they are cutting. So I'm going to do each set separately. I am using a smaller machine at the moment. Now this machine does not have enough pressure to emboss the lines on. You can get embossing mats for them, but I don't have much joy with them. It makes it too hard. So if I cut this one first, so just putting the dies onto this piece of, it's a plain white uncoated cardstock. This one is more for inking and adding colour. So I'll just run this through the machine. Okay, so as you can see, they're just ready to pop straight out. Oh, thank you. There we go. But this machine does not have enough pressure to emboss the lines on. I'm not going to do it with these dies because I've got lots of others pre-cut that I can show you. So the next set of dies, let's move those back out of the way, and that back, is the 3 petals. So let's pop those on. And again, you can see how they've cut cleanly, no problems. So just pop them out of the dies and let's have a look. With these 2 sets of dies, there is an awful lot of different flower types that you can make. So let's show you some of them. Right, so if we go like that, so that's that set there, and that is that set there. Now, different types of cardstock that you're going to cut them out of give different effects. Okay, I have also cut these in red because I want to show you something. So these are the white ones. In order to shape a flower, you pokey tool, just bend it, curl it over the pokey tool. You can use your fingernail if you haven't got a pokey tool or they're a bit too fiddly for you, so you can shape it that way. You do, however, on this style of flower, get more shape if you actually just trim at the join slightly inwards, just to release those petals and allow you to create a much deeper curl. Okay, I'm going to bring in my embossing mat. So I'm going to, let's finish this one. I'm going to curl this one with my pokey tool. Okay, like this. So that's curled with the pokey tool. I have an embossing tool, and I'm just going to release these petals just that little bit extra. Like that. And I'm going to place it face down, and I'm going to run around the edge of each petal. And as you do that, petal curls and has some texture on the edges, okay, some little lines. It's a good technique and gives a different effect. It doesn't take long to do either. So let's get that undone, and then we'll do this one in a slightly different manner again. So you will see 3 different ways of shaping petals on this. Okay, so a slightly larger embossing tool on this one, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag on the rubber embossing mat, I'm going to drag towards me, and that makes the petals curl a lot more. Okay, so just down the centres. And you can see with this one, it's given a lot. These are quite harsh for me, these little tiny marks in the card where it's curled. I don't particularly like them, that is a bit too harsh for me. However, having said that, what I'm going to do is 3 different ways I've shown you of how to shape your petals. So let's get these out and all looking in the same direction. So as you can see, there is quite a bit of difference between the 3 different ways of doing it, and each will vary according to how you need it to be. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting a dab of glue in the middle of each of these, and I'm alternating the petals so that they fill in the gaps. Okay, so some will fill in better than others, and I'm just going to give it a poke with my embossing tool, and that is the flower that is created. As you can see, it's quite dimensional. It's reasonably pretty, but we can do more than that. So, taking some that I have cut previously, where's that gone? There was another pile and I've lost it. Never mind, it'll be about somewhere. So let's have a look and see if we can build a flower from these. I'm going to show you something a little bit different with this now. I am going to just release the petals a little bit more by snipping into the middle. Okay. And I am going to use on this one distress ink, and I'm just going to run it over. I didn't blend that one out, did I? Just going to run this over, and you will be able to see that the lines are embossed into it. This is a pearlized cardstock, so that's better. If you run your embossing mat over this, obviously it will create a more pronounced detail on the petals. So let's pop that one back over there. So if I hold this up, you should be able to see the lines on that. Yes, you can. That's the embossed detail that comes. This has been cut on Centura Pearl cardstock on a Gemini. This has not been embossed with a rubber mat over the top, so this is what has come direct from the cut. Okay, the metal has debossed somewhat into the petals. So I'll show you another way of doing something with this. If you grab each petal and you fold it in half and give it a good squeeze so that it ends up being quite spiky. Okay, just give it a good squeeze, and there we go. one more to do. Not cutting too far into it, I'm just cutting enough to get a bit more movement when I squeeze it together. Okay, so that then creates that sort of shape. It is quite dimensional. If I went to stick that on a piece of card, I would have to pull these up first and apply the glue there, okay, right on this piece here, and then when it laid down you would end up with the petals sticking up like that because of this part here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to add a couple of drops of glue. I'm going to layer this up and on there, and then I'm going to grab my embossing tool and squish in the middle. So we end up with that flower there, which is quite a bit different to that one. Okay, so other flowers that I have done that are in this style, I've lightly creased that one, and that gives me a poinsettia. Okay, different colours change the flowers, so that's just folded. This one's on paper, double-sided paper, and folded. This one is a mixture of all three. So there's the creasing, there's the stretching it over the fingernail, and there's the rolling it around the pokey tool. And then there's this one here, which is quite nice, so I'm going to stick that on the top there. As you can see, this one has had ink applied to bring out the detail on the leaves, has been lightly curled and placed one on top of the other to create a different flower again. Okay, so that's all from this die, this shape die. Okay, so moving on to the other shape die that we have here, which is this one. Okay, it's a 3-petal, 1, 2, 3. This will deboss into the cardstock on a Gemini, and it is worth embossing it through your machines to give more detail on the petals. So there's quite a few things that you can actually do with this style. So let's have a look and see what we can create. So here is my flower, and I'm just going to quite heavily add some distress ink to this. Okay, there. Now I've got a bit of white in the bottom, so if I take scattered straw, which is a nice yellow, and I'm going to apply that to the middle of it. So that we have that. Okay, now even though it's still damp, I'm just going to give this a quick shape with my fingers. Okay, and push those up like that, and we have a flower that is quite pansy like. Okay, if I take the, sorry, let me just tidy. If I take the same petals, so that's 1, 2 and 3. Okay, I'm doing exactly the same as the other one, the right size, right corresponding. I'm going to squeeze right down the split in this leaf. Okay, so I'm going to bend it and fold it. I'm going to do this on all 3 layers. The more layers you add, the thicker the flower. One thing, the smallest of these dies, you do need to just release one of the petals. Okay, it's just the manufacturing. It's just a little bit tricky in that particular point. So just giving these a squeeze, and like that. Bring the embossing mat back in. Right, so if I put a dot of glue on there, I'm just going to lay this one over. I am not gluing it down yet until I've got the final one into position, which will be about there. I'm going to use my embossing tool, and I'm just going to squish down. Okay, and that creates that rather lovely flower. Okay, so using a bit of gilding wax or gilding polish, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to catch the edges of this flower just to give some definition and highlight each of the curves on here. Okay, it doesn't need to be an awful lot, it just literally does need to be just a little tiny touch, just to bring the eye in a little bit on this. And there is one more under there that I haven't caught. There we go. There. Right. And that looks quite pretty with a little bit of gold on the outside of it. Okay. If you're going to do the simple things, like I said, the curling around your pokey tool, just bringing these in. And one more. Just need to trim. Like that. And then dots of glue. And position them over the gap. There we go. I've used a different type of cardstock. Never mind. Doesn't matter. And I didn't necessarily want to do that. Let's get it in there. There. That's it. Great. So that creates quite a different flower. Okay. If you take these, and where the sort of split in the petal is, if you give it a snip towards the centre, not all the way, but just towards the centre, and then shape each petal individually like this. Oops. And that one's already been done, and it's just the little one that I want to do next. So I'm just going to snip in just to give myself 6 petals on this as opposed to the 3. And then curl each petal then individually like this, and then we're just going to build the flower up. Now I know I've got 2 the same size here, I think, but it doesn't matter. And put the centre one in. We're just trying to alternate them just so that we get right. So we've got that one, we've got that one, and we've got that one so far. Okay. Cutting them on double-sided papers gives a very, very different effect, especially as when you form a lot of these flowers, you're going to see underneath them as well. So this flower here, you can see underneath the petals. Okay, so ideally you want to do it on a double-sided paper, and they cut really cleanly and easily. So now to cards that I have created with these flowers. So let's move everything out of the way. Oh, by the way, unless you live in the middle of a desert, do heat set each of your flowers with a heat gun. Give it a quick blast with a heat gun after you've manipulated it and finished fiddling with it. That will help to set the flower in the position that you have decided you want. Okay, so those are the dies there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some cards that I made with those dies. So the first one that we have is this lovely Christmas card. This is using the pointy flower with 5 petals. Okay, just gently curling them, offsetting them, and a gem in the middle, and that makes quite a pretty little Christmas card. Okay, again with the 5 petal flower, this looks completely different. Right, it's the same die, it is the same die, it's just that with pinching each of the petals, okay, it creates a completely different flower. So if I was to take the flowers off this, it would be a pretty card, but it wouldn't be a special card, and that's what these flowers have done. They have made this into a special card. Okay, so I've used an embossed background with some pearlized card. I've matted onto some coordinating pearlized card, cut an aperture with stitch detail, stamped sentiment. Okay, there's 5 flowers on here. When you use flowers, you should really try to use an odd number of flowers. It seems to work better than an even number. And I've just added various little bits to this just to finish the card off. Okay, most of this is available on AliExpress. Okay, and definitely Alina stocks quite a few of these items. So that's that one. Moving on to the, where did that one go? I've lost one. The pansy type one that I did. Nope, can't see it. Right. Anyway, here is a card that I made using this shape. The way that I showed you, just by colouring around the outsides here and putting some yellow in the middle, and we have a lovely pansy display. Okay, embossed cardstock, again pearlized just to draw the eye, and the pansies really are the focal point of this. Okay, so let's move that one and bring this one in again. This die, okay, creating these flowers with the gold wax, gilding wax on the edges, and a gold pearl drop in the center. Okay, the leaves are on acetate, embossed background, a bow, a sentiment. Again, you will be able to get this on Alina. A die cut oval, and this card looks very different to that card. Okay, so 2 completely different looks from that. There is one other look that you can get from these, and I'm going to show you. So if I just cut down following the line of the edge of the flower, okay, and just trimming. Let's twist that round so you can see it. You get a heart. Okay, so all I did was I cut it out of red cardstock and I created this card. These are just the petals released from each other. Large sentiment die which says you, matted and layered, and a completely different effect. Okay, so there's quite a lot that you can do with these dies. I have done 5 cards. I could do a lot more. The fact of the matter is that I have to bear in mind how long these videos are going to be. So yes, lots of cards, lots of different effects that you can do with these. Thank you very much for watching.